Make that big boss less special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to our coverage of PixelPop 2017. We're hanging out with Carol, who is in charge of all this loveliness here. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. It's day two. Yeah. How things been going from your perspective of being the person in charge of everything? Just how has that been going?
Things have been great this year. We've had really great attendance, no major fires, which I'm really excited about. Everything happened before the doors opened, which was like a huge load off of my mind. But no, we've had a really, really excellent turnout this year, and we've worked with St. Louis University to use their space, and it has been gorgeous and wonderful.
Space.
Yeah, it has been just such a perfect space for us and exactly what we needed. So we're really excited this year.
So can you talk a little bit of how PixelPop started? It's 2 years old, 3 years old?
This is our fourth year.
Fourth year.
Yeah.
4 years old. Can you talk about what sparked the idea for it and kind of how you got to where you were year one to how far you've come to year four?
Yeah, so back 4 years ago when we first started it, I was still working with my team at Happy Badger Studio, which I'm no longer with them. I love them dearly, but we were working together with the idea of we would go to GDC, the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, every year. It's very expensive. It's hard to get to, and a lot of people in St. Louis aren't able to either afford that or afford the time to do that. And we're like, you know, the Midwest needs some sort of resource for game developers and for opportunities for game developers in this area to connect with players and to be able to show their games and to be able to learn about, you know, the process of creation. And so it was Ben Triola's idea, Ben Triola of Happy Badger Studio, to say, like, let's just do this. And we had been friends with Jeremy Johnson, who runs Anime St. Louis, which is a huge, amazing anime convention in the city. And we're like, hey, Jeremy, is this
feasible?
Is this a thing we can do? And he's like, yeah. And so we decided, I think it was in May of 2013, that we were like, yeah, let's just do this. We started looking at venues. We launched a Kickstarter and raised a couple $1,000s, enough to do like a bare bones event, and found a sponsored venue and had it running by September. So like from May to September, we ran a conference, and it was just so amazing. And just over the course of the years, we've just continued to grow and continue to kind of hone in on our mission. This year, we are really focusing pretty much entirely on creators and on the really unique side of independent game creation. Whereas previous years, we've had tournaments in retro gaming, and we just decided to just focus on the creative side, which I think has done really well. It's helped to keep the event a lot more focused.
What's the hardest part of trying to find people or get people to know who PixelPop is and getting them to come here from the exhibitor standpoint?
From the exhibitor standpoint, it's been just a lot of direct outreach. I meet a lot of folks as I travel around the country and go to conferences and conventions myself. I'll tell people about the event. I'll talk about the kinds of things that we're doing in the Midwest, and people just get excited and interested because every game community has a very different feel. And I think a lot of people just like to explore and get to know new communities and also take advantage of low-cost events. So we try to be very developer-friendly. So we don't charge very much for table space. You know, hotels and travel to St. Louis are generally relatively inexpensive.
We have good cost of living here.
Yeah, and so you know, we've pulled people from all over the country this year, and for some previous years, we've got people coming in all the way from Portland and Arizona and California and, you know, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and it's so exciting to see people just taking the time to come and support the community in St. Louis.
So you did an interview, I think, recently with, I think it was STL Magazine.
Yeah.
And I saw a little bit there. Because when I think of St. Louis gaming, I do think of you. I feel like you're one of the spearheads of what's going on in St. Louis. And what is your goal, I guess, for the St. Louis community? Do you want to see St. Louis become a hub for developers? What do you want PixelPop to be 5 years, 10 years down the road? What do you want this to become?
I mean, I really like PixelPop as it is. I'd obviously like it to grow a little bit and attract more attention, especially from regional developers. But it does what I always wanted it to do, and that is provide resources to the people who need it. And what I'd like to see is for people to come to St. Louis and realize that this is a great place to be creative, to create entertainment media and art and things like that because of our low cost of living, because of our excited community here, that they can bring their studios here and actually have a good quality of life and still be able to, you know, work on experimental projects and work on things that might not be able to allow them to survive in a place like San Francisco or New York.
Which is expensive.
Exactly. And so part of the goal, you know, with continuing to push events and resources in St. Louis is to kind of attract people to the idea of, no, this is a good place. We have a good community and we have a good space. And I'd like to think that we're helping with that. And if nothing else, then we're allowing people to come in and share their experiences from all over the country. And those people coming in from out of town get to learn what it's like in St. Louis and what St. Louis developers' perspectives are like.
From St. Louis's perspective, in the national news, we tend to not get painted a very good light because it's usually top murdered things. Like, we don't have the best light, but this town, me and Tom both, we do Level 2 Gamers STL because we are from St. Louis and we're proud of where we're from. And kind of like you're saying, we want people to understand that this is not a scary place to be. It's actually a really cool, thriving city.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely different. It's a unique city. And it has its problems. Every city is going to have its problems. But the way that we can try to navigate those problems and fix those problems and solve a lot of those problems is through better economy, better creativity, better community. And I'm not going to say that the game industry itself is going to solve that, but by bringing powerful minds and powerful communities to the city, we can try to work together to figure out ways that we can make some of those issues, bring them to light, start discussions around them, whether that's through entertainment or whether that's through politics. Like, as long as we have powerful minds coming into the city and working in the city, we're going to be able to work together to make the city a better place.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed is somebody who, I'm not from St. Louis. I'm a transplant here. I moved here about, I guess, 8 years ago now. And we started Level 2 3 years ago. Is the gaming community in St. Louis is a lot bigger. Because when I think of games, I think of New York, I think of Chicago, I think of LA, and I think of Montreal. Those are and then obviously there's international studios. But in the U.S., those are kind of the destinations I think of.
Montreal is not in the U.S.
I know. It's close enough. I lived in Canada for 2 years. I know. Or for 6 years. But it's close enough. It's like just north. But those are the places I think of when it comes to where game developers are based. And what for those of you who don't know, what are some developers here that they might be aware of that they may not think are in St. Louis?
Yeah, we in St. Louis we have a few really great studios. We have Riot Games, the creators of a little game called League of Legends. You may have heard of it. We also, as far as corporate developers, we have NVIDIA, an office of NVIDIA, and they work on demo games for their VR. And as far as independent studios, we have Butterscotch Shenanigans, which created a game called
I love their name.
Crashlands. Yeah,
I love their name.
Yeah, I got to work with those guys for a few months. It was a lot of fun. And they were named one of Time's top 10 games of 2016. We have my former studio, Happy Badger Studio, which just released Smugglecraft on PlayStation 4. We have Woodsy Studio, which releases visual novels for Steam and PlayStation. So we have a number of notable indies that are actively creating work.
It's not just that kid in their basement, which is nothing wrong with that, but we have
those too.
Yes, but there is an established set of indie studios, because I think for us, when we're trying to find people to reach out to, the hardest thing for us is where do you go to find them, and that's why PixelPop for coverage purposes is really nice. And my question to you said a lot of it is through direct connections, through going to conventions. If somebody's trying to get into the gaming industry and they don't know kind of where to start if they're a developer, what advice would you give them to say, hey, you're new, I kind of just want to see what I should do, where I should go? What would be your advice for first steps for them?
The first steps to getting started as a developer is find your local community. Honestly, it's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Connecting, seeing if there is a community nearby you. And if there isn't, then try to build one. That's huge. And getting involved in things like game jams, if you're unfamiliar with the idea of a game jam, it's a whole bunch of game developers get together over the course of a weekend, form teams, get a theme, and
cool.
make a game in 2 days. It's like from start to finish, you've made a game. And that is one of the most formative, incredible experiences that any game developer can have. And it's also a great way to connect with a community, learn how to work on a team, learn how to scope. And it's we in St. Louis, we have one of the largest global game jams in the world, actually.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, it's top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, St. Louis, and it's like the second largest in the United States. And so, no matter where you are, you're going to be able to find like-minded people. Even if you feel like you're in a flyover city, within a couple hours drive, you're going to be able to find people who care about the same things you care about and who will be able to support you, provide feedback, and just really help get you on your feet.
So what's one thing when it comes to local developers, what tips, what resources could they go to if they want to, okay, I want to make a game. I have some sort of at least coding background to understand what it takes to make a game, but where can I go to get my questions answered or maybe bounce ideas off of other developers that maybe have already run into the same problems I have?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're working on. So if you're working on tabletop, Board Game Geek is a really great resource for tabletop game designers. If you're working in Unity, the Unity forums are a great resource. If you have a local community like St. Louis, if you join our game developer co-op, you can actually become a part of the Slack channel, and you can just have conversations with anybody in the Slack channel. There's also there's Facebook groups for independent game developers and things like that. So all you have to do is do a couple of Google searches and find specifically what it is that you need, and you'll be able to find it.
Gotcha. So what's some of the stuff that you have worked on in the past that you're most proud of? What is your, when somebody asks you, what has Carol done? What is the one thing she's like, that is my thing? Other
than running St. Louis's only game conference.
That's a teeny tiny thing.
Yeah, so I'm a game designer. I'm an independent game designer myself, and I've done mobile games. I created a little game called Cosmic Kitty Pop, which is a stupid little...
We played a game at Indie PopCon called Cattails.
Yeah.
And I was telling Tom earlier, I love those stupid, I guess stupid's the wrong word, but those ideas that just seem dumb, but they're so much fun because that's what it is. It's enjoying games for what they are.
Yeah, and it's just whack-a-mole. It was one of the first games that I got to make by myself, and I kind of discovered that, if you take a proven mechanic and you just apply your own idea to it, it's really easy to get started. And so that was kind of the catalyst for me making games by myself with my own utilities. After that, I worked on a couple other smaller projects that I never released, and then I made a little card game called Pass the Buck, a game of corporate responsibility management.
Sounds like she's plugged that before.
I have a couple of times. Don't get me started on the tutorial. But since then I've worked on some other personal digital projects that are available on my itch.io, but I really like my kind of game ideology is to create game mechanics out of emotion and human experience. So it's kind of more artsy than commercial and entertainment, but it's something that I feel really passionate about.
Because one of the things I've noticed in the St. Louis community is your name always gets brought up. No matter who it is, somebody always says, yeah, I know Carol. I was like when we were in Indie PopCon a couple months ago, people there were like, yeah, I've Happy Badger. Happy Badger ended up not going to Indie PopCon for some reason. I don't know what the specific reason was. We sent a tweet to him like, where are you at? And then everybody around them was like, yeah, we wish they were here. But you personally, your name comes up a lot when we're talking to these indie devs of saying she is the driving force behind a lot of the stuff that we're able to do. So as somebody who is covering indie media, we want to say thank you. Indie games.
Thank you.
That's awesome because you need that driving force behind it. You need somebody who is going to push this forward because if you don't action on something, it's not going to get done. And
I hate to take all the credit. There's a lot of really, really amazing organizers, and it's just, when you organize stuff, you're obviously more visible. It's not that I'm doing anything more special or more important than anybody else. It's just sometimes when you grab the reins and you start organizing events, people just see you.
And you're also probably the point of contact for a lot of things too.
Right. But I mean, just there's a whole new board of directors on the St. Louis Game Developer Co-op right now, Wes Ehrlichman and Catherine Brennan and Jenny Gibbons and Weston Brieger and Scott Cassiopeia. And these folks are so passionate and so excited that I can't wait to see what they do with the community in St. Louis.
So St. Louis, I feel like you're talking about find a local community earlier. I feel like our community has kind of gotten to the point where it's now kind of self-sustaining and growing For somebody, you talked about potentially starting one, what tips would you give for somebody who wants to start a community? Say they're in some city or some town that doesn't have one. Where do I go about trying to start just getting people into this thing and get them to find it?
We found a lot of help by using, we used meetup.com and we used Facebook. So we had a Facebook group, or we have a Facebook group, and just reaching out. I did a lot when we were first starting the St. Louis Game Developer Co-op. I did a lot of outreach. I found people on Kickstarter of all places. Anybody who had a Kickstarter game in the St. Louis area, I sent them a direct message and said, hey, we would love to have you as a part of our community. This is the, these are the events that are coming up. We'd love to meet up with you. I know a lot of other people from other cities just kind of, they'll find people on Twitter. I did a lot of Twitter searches when we were first starting the community too, and just basically looking for people who have similar projects or who are working on interesting things or even just working on anything, and say, hey, let's get together. You set up a time and a place. It's usually really easy to find a free venue for a small meetup. Bars.
We do drink ups.
Bars,
I've yet to go
coffee
to one,
shops.
and I feel bad because every time I see it, it's like, oh, I work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing to keep in mind if you're organizing a community is like timing and age. Like, don't do everything at a bar. Not everybody is 21 and up, and not everybody likes to drink. Coffee shops are great. Studios, if you have any studios in your city, see if they'll be willing to, loan a conference room. Libraries. But there's so many opportunities to set stuff up, even if it just starts out a few people. I think our first ever game jam in St. Louis was 5 people. There were 3 games made.
And now it's top 10.
300.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's possible to do it. And it only takes a few years to really be able to build that momentum.
So what's next for you? What do you got going on now? You've already done all this stuff, and I've known you. I think I met you last year at Wizard World. From the year and a half now that I've known you, everything I've heard is you're a very driven person. You're always working on something, which is good. But what's next for you? What have you got going on?
I'm moving to New York.
Ooh, which part of New York?
Yeah, I'll be moving to Brooklyn. Actually, I've spent this entire interview talking about how great St. Louis is.
New York's not bad either. My family's from New York, so
yeah. I hit a point in my life where I realized, I really want to build up my skills. I want to focus on my creative work. And I found the Masters in Fine Arts and Game Design program at NYU and decided
that's a pretty decent school.
Yeah. So their ideologies just so fall in line with my game ideologies. I just couldn't not apply, and I found out I got in and decided that it was time to go study and work and do some really amazing things. So I'm still planning on supporting PixelPop Festival in the future. It's not, I'm always going to be passionate about building resources for Midwesterners, but I'm also really excited about spending 2 years working on interesting creative projects under the mentorship of brilliant game designers.
How tough was that decision for you? Because like you said, you're still going to be with PixelPop, but it's going to take away some time from being in the area, because you can be in a whole different state halfway across the country. How difficult was that decision for you personally of, I want to do this versus I have this stuff I've done here, and it's going to suck to kind of have to step away a little bit from it?
It was a really hard choice. I love St. Louis. I've never not lived in St. Louis.
That's crazy to me.
I know, right? And like me too. When I tell that to my friends, they're like, yeah, get out.
Yeah.
It's like, as great as the city is, it's important to have other experiences, So it was a hard decision, and I definitely bounced back and forth and thought about just pursuing, self-driven education here. But I just realized, one of the things that I can do by going outside of the city is bring a lot of the resources that I find elsewhere back in. So I'm really hoping to be able to take advantage of that and really do my best to still give St. Louis the resources it needs, and also, be able to build up this kind of idea that St. Louis game developers have some, we hold our ground.
I think it's interesting because I don't know if you know, but I have moved plenty of times in my life. St. Louis, as long as I've lived somewhere consecutively, I think I'm going on 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
But other than that, I have moved. I joke every 3 years, my brain's like, it's time to go somewhere else. So when I hear somebody that's lived in the same area the whole time, I was like, this is crazy. But it is cool that you're going to be able to go outside of St. Louis and, like you said, bring those back. And I tell people all the time with me, with the experiences I've had, that shapes who I am, that I have connections elsewhere because of doing something else. And I tell this a lot to people when they watch is go outside your comfort zone. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, we met you because Jordan, who used to be on the channel, knew you and is like, have you met Carol? I was like, I don't know who this person is. So that kind of thing, and just kind of asking, like, we got press here because we asked, and you just never know what's going to happen if you take the opportunity. And don't be afraid to do something.
I like to say the risks that we take are what define us.
Yes.
If you don't take any risks, you're probably not very exciting or interesting of a person. You don't have that much history. The more risks you take, the more stories you have, and the more opportunities you give yourself. So yeah, it was one of those decision-making processes of like, do I want to keep doing
safe.
what I've been doing and, keep my cheap rent and keep my friends and keep my connections, or do I really want to push myself way far outside of my comfort zone and try something completely different that a lot of people are going to think is silly? Yeah.
That's and the other side of that is not be afraid to fail. Not that I'm saying you're going to NYU and you're going to fail, but
it's totally possible.
But it's one of those things where when you do outside your comfort zone, I think a lot of people stay in what they know because it's comfortable. They know they have that safety net if something were to happen. And for you, have you ever been to New York before?
Oh yeah, I love New York. I have a lot of friends there, and I like the NYU campus is really cool.
Yes,
so.
Like I said, my parents live in New York. I have friends who go to NYU, and it's definitely a different city than St. Louis. Learning to drive in New York was the craziest experience of my life.
I'm not taking a car.
Yeah. You don't want. Well, we lived outside the city and we came in, but yeah. But I wish you all the best of luck with that. Good luck with everything you got going on in the future. PixelPop here this year is been fantastic. I've only been here one day. Tom's been here both days, so I was jealous yesterday because he kept texting me and he's like, "Hey, have you heard this?" Or "I've met this developer," and I was like, I'm working right now. Leave me alone. I'm jealous. But
I'm so glad you guys got to come and join us.
It's such a cool event. I kind of wish we'd known about it sooner type thing. It's like one of those things where you're like, oh, kind of like GDEX I was talking about earlier is we found out at Indie PopCon, like, oh, this is a thing we should go to because we love finding those. I was telling you earlier how we like to find those, for us, the game devs or the smaller teams that may not have a voice, and help give them as little voice as ours is, give them a voice with it.
Absolutely.
And you giving us platforms like PixelPop, or for us, Indie PopCon when we went out there, is a fantastic thing because not everybody can get into E3 and be on that stage because there is an hour for everybody or less. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Where can we check you out if they want to follow more about you? On social medias, the interwebs.
I'm on Twitter at Carol Mertz, and my website is carolmertz.com. You can find all my games and all the projects that I've worked on right there.
Cool. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, welcome to the second level. Bye.
Bye.
Ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level.